The wind howled like a wounded beast across the barren plains, rattling the loose wooden boards of the tiny shack that barely stood against the harsh wilderness. Inside, a poor widow named Martha sat close to a dim lantern, her thin hands wrapped around her 2 children, trying to keep them warm as the cold crept in through every crack in the walls. Life had not been kind to her. Ever since her husband passed away 2 winters ago, leaving behind nothing but debts and sorrow, she had been fighting a losing battle against hunger, poverty, and loneliness. Her son, Tommy, no older than 10, stared at the empty pot hanging over the cold stove. "Mama, will we eat tonight?" he asked softly, his voice trembling not just from hunger but from the fear he tried so hard to hide. Martha forced a gentle smile, even though her heart broke into pieces. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered, brushing his hair back. But deep down, she knew tomorrow might be worse. Just as silence wrapped around them again, a distant sound broke through the storm, the faint thud of something heavy hitting the ground outside. Tommy's eyes widened. "Mama, did you hear that?" Martha froze. In these lands, unexpected sounds often meant danger, bandits, drifters, or worse. She hesitated, her instincts telling her to stay inside, to protect her children at all costs. But then came a faint groan, barely audible through the wind. Someone was out there. Against her better judgment, Martha grabbed the lantern and slowly pushed the creaky door open. The cold air slapped her face as she stepped outside, her eyes scanning the darkness. And then she saw him. A man lay crumpled in the dirt, his clothes soaked in blood, his hat fallen beside him. His horse stood a few feet away, restless but loyal, refusing to leave. Martha's heart raced. This wasn't just any traveler. This was a cowboy, badly wounded, possibly dying. She could walk away. She should walk away. Helping strangers had consequences. In her world, kindness often came at a cost she could not afford. But then she heard him whisper, barely clinging to life, "Help, please." That single word shattered her hesitation. "Tommy, come help me," she called out. Together, with all the strength they had, Martha and her children dragged the unconscious man into their tiny shack. His body was heavy, his breathing shallow, and blood stained everything it touched. Martha quickly tore a piece of her only blanket and pressed it against his wound. "We don't have much, but we'll do what we can," she murmured. Through the night, she cleaned his wounds with warm water, fed him the last crumbs of bread they had, and stayed awake while her children slept beside the fire, watching over a stranger who might not even survive till morning. Hours passed, the storm calmed, and just before dawn, the cowboy stirred. His eyes slowly opened, filled with pain and confusion. He looked around the poor, broken shack, at the thin children, at the exhausted widow who had clearly given everything she had to save him. "You saved me?" he asked weakly. Martha nodded gently. "We couldn't leave you out there." He tried to sit up but winced in pain. "You shouldn't have. You don't even have enough for yourselves." Martha smiled softly. "Maybe not, but we still have hearts." Those words hit him harder than the bullet that had nearly taken his life. For the first time in years, the man, who had faced danger, betrayal, and loss, felt something he had long forgotten. Kindness. Real, selfless kindness. Little did Martha know, the man lying in her shack was not just any cowboy. He was a man whose name carried power across the entire region, a man who owned more land than anyone for miles, a man people feared, respected, and envied. But here, in this broken shack, he was just a wounded soul saved by a poor widow who had nothing, yet gave everything. And as he slowly drifted back to sleep, one thought echoed in his mind. These people deserve more than this life. Right finger if you're feeling this story so far. Yanni, imagine what happens next, because chapter 2 will flip everything upside down. And hey, if you love emotional, powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to your channel, Automotor, or your story channel name, and turn on notifications, because the next story might just be even more unforgettable. Chapter 2, The Truth That Changed Everything. Morning sunlight crept into the fragile shack, revealing just how little the widow and her children truly had. The cowboy, now awake, quietly observed everything. The cracked walls, the empty shelves, the worn-out clothes. And yet, despite all that, there was warmth in this place. A kind of warmth money could never buy. "Name's Daniel," he said, his voice stronger now. "Martha," she replied, "and these are my children, Tommy and little Sarah." Daniel nodded, his eyes lingering on the children who smiled at him despite their hunger. "Why did you help me?" he asked again, still unable to understand. Martha paused for a moment. Because no one helped us, when we needed it most. Those words hit deep. Daniel looked away, guilt creeping into his chest. For years, he had been a powerful ranch owner, feared, respected, but distant. He had wealth, land, men working under him, but no family, no warmth. And now, the very people who had nothing had shown him more humanity than anyone ever had. Days passed, and Daniel slowly recovered. During that time, he saw everything. Martha skipping meals so her children could eat. Tommy trying to act brave while hiding his hunger. Little Sarah giving her portion of food to her mother. It broke him. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Daniel stood outside, staring into the distance where his ranch lay, miles away, vast and powerful. He had a choice to make. Return to his world, and forget this place ever existed. Or, change everything. The next morning, without saying much, Daniel prepared his horse. "You're leaving?" Tommy asked, trying to hide his disappointment. Daniel knelt down and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I have something important to take care of, but I promise, I'll come back." Martha gave a small nod. She had heard promises before, promises that never returned. "Take care," she said softly. And just like that, he rode away. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Winter came again, harsher than before. Food ran out. Hope began to fade. Martha stood outside one cold evening, staring at the empty horizon. "He's not coming back, is he?" Tommy whispered. Before she could answer, a distant rumble shook the ground. At first, she thought it was thunder. But then, she saw them. Dozens of riders, wagons, supplies, and at the front, Daniel. But this time, he wasn't just a wounded cowboy. He rode like a man of power, a man of authority, a man followed by many. The riders stopped in front of the shack. Martha stood frozen. Daniel stepped down from his horse and walked toward her with a calm but determined expression. "I told you, I'd come back." She looked around, confused. What is all this?" Daniel smiled. "This is your new beginning." Within hours, everything changed. Food filled their home. Warm clothes replaced the torn ones. Doctors checked their health. And then, Daniel revealed the truth. "I own the largest ranch in this region," he said. "And from today, you and your children are part of it." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do this for us?" Daniel looked at her with deep sincerity. "Because when I had everything, I had nothing. And when I had nothing, you gave me everything." Silence filled the air, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was filled with hope. The shack was replaced with a beautiful home. Tommy began learning to run the ranch. Sarah finally smiled without hunger in her eyes. And Martha, for the first time in years, she felt safe, respected, and valued. As for Daniel, he no longer felt alone. Because sometimes, the greatest treasures in life are not found in wealth, but in the kindness of those who have nothing to give, yet give it anyway.